So tomorrow, another fight is actually happening up there in Manchester at the Co-op Live Arena. Frank Warren with Queensbury are putting on a show called Heavy Impact. It seems like it's headlined by Joyce and Filip Hrgovic, who we're going to speak about in a bit. I just wanted to touch on this guy that's making his debut. A guy supposedly born in Moscow but lives in Wolverhampton. He represented GB in the Olympics. This guy's name is Delicious Ori. I'm like, my name Delicious, Well, I'll go on for that. This is not a nickname. This guy's name is Delicious because his dad said he was inspired by the name by a vocalist called Delius Kennedy. I just thought that was a bit hilarious. He's making his debut. His name's Delicious Ori. He's a heavyweight. And there's a few heavyweight fights. There's about 5 to 6 fights that are light heavyweight and upwards. A cruiserweight fight, 2, 3 heavyweight fights, and a light heavyweight fight. But the fight that I want to talk about in particular is not Delicious Ori's debut. It is the so-called main event. I'm not sure if it's the main event. It seems like it's the main event. It's being advertised as the main event. 39-year-old Joyce, 16 wins, 3 losses against 32-year-old Filip Hrgovic, 17 and 1 loss. And that loss he suffered in his last fight, which was last June, for the IBF interim title. I think he was actually the interim champion and Daniel Dubois won it from him. He represented Eddie Hearn's team in the 5-on-5 clash. And obviously Daniel Dubois was with Frank Warren and Queensbury, as he's been throughout the whole of his pro career. And even though the fight started off with Filip Hrgovic laying into Daniel Dubois, Dubois weathered the storm and came back to stop Filip Hrgovic on cuts. He had a cut over both eyes and it was bleeding terribly. So they said, we have to stop this fight. And it got stopped on cuts, and that's how Daniel Dubois became the IBF interim title holder to then eventually become the IBF champion. Joyce, on the other hand, after losing twice to Zhilei Zhang in 2023, he came back in 2024, March, beat Cash Ali with a stoppage in the 10th and final round. After that, in July, he fought Derek Chisora and lost a unanimous decision. So he's coming off of the back of a loss, and so is Filip Hrgovic. So obviously they're both on some sort of comeback. I don't know if they're trying to get back into title contention. It makes sense for them to be trying to get back into title contention. But for me, Joyce being 39 years old, this is really definitely his last chance to get into title contention again. Filip Hrgovic being 32, and with heavyweights having a career that can go into their late 30s, he could probably come back from a loss if he loses again, because this would be only his second loss. I do believe this is more 50-50 than I originally would have thought, because after he beat Daniel Dubois, I would have thought he would have beat Hrgovic at that point. Suffering them 2 losses to Zhilei Zhang wasn't that bad for me, but the turning point was that loss against Derek Chisora. After that, I'm thinking this is not the same fighter, and this is a fighter that will lose to a Filip Hrgovic. And given the fact that Filip Hrgovic actually lost to Daniel Dubois in his last fight, I still would have almost given Joyce the benefit of the doubt again. But having seen how he got treated by Derek Chisora in his last fight, I'm not sure I can put my trust in him anymore. His defense mechanism is the fact that he can take punishment. And to be fair to you, that's only as good as how long it can actually last. And wear and tear is a thing. Your head is not supposed to be getting punched in. And to be fair to you, Joyce takes a lot of punishment to the jawbone, to the head. He takes a lot of punishment. He defends with his face. I always said that he defends with his face, which is just mad. And Filip Hrgovic, even though I do definitely class him as a better boxer than Joyce and also a bit quicker than Joyce, I still see him as flattering to deceive, basically. I thought that he was a good boxer, which he is a good boxer. He's just not as heavy-handed as heavyweights need to be fair to you. Because the way I saw him lamping up Daniel Dubois, I was surprised that Daniel Dubois actually withstood the storm and withstood the pressure to come back and turn the fight around. Because when I saw Daniel Dubois quit against Joyce and then quit against Alexander Usyk, I was thinking, this guy's a bit of a quitter. But to be fair to Daniel Dubois, With the Joe Joyce fight, I can understand him not wanting to go on with a busted eye socket. It couldn't have been very comfortable in there. And the reports after were saying that if he stayed fighting and it got any worse, he probably could have lost his eyesight. And not everybody can be like Inui. When Inui fought Nonito Donaire, I think it was the first time he fought Nonito Donaire, he had a busted eye socket in that fight, but he came back to win the fight. He stayed in the fight and actually got the win at the end. So not everybody can be as warrior-like as Inui. So obviously, Dubois doesn't have that warrior instinct. But maybe he does. Maybe he learned from that situation and he's grown from that situation. Because since then, he never quit against Big Baby Miller and he turned around the Hrgovic fight. After he was definitely losing in them first couple rounds, he turned it around because he was getting hit left, right, and center in that Hrgovic fight like he had no defense. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be an early night. But he ended up turning it around and actually winning the fight. But once a quitter, always a quitter, I've heard in boxing. That's a term I've heard in boxing. If that's true, time will tell. But that's a whole different story because that's Daniel Dubois. Filip Hrgovic against Joe Joyce. I'm actually going to go for Filip Hrgovic to win this. Maybe he'll win on points because Joe Joyce is tough as old boots and he can withstand pressure. And I've seen Hrgovic pile pressure onto a guy and still lose. He never got knocked out. He's lost on his feet. The referee stopped it because of the advice of the doctors saying that the cuts were too bad. So in that sense there, I still haven't seen Hrgovic kind of like in any trouble other than when he fought Zhilei Zhang. And then he got up to beat Zhilei Zhang with a unanimous decision victory. So I'm going to go with Filip Hrgovic to win a unanimous decision on the night. That's what I believe will happen. So that's what I'm going to go with. Filip Hrgovic to beat Joe Joyce and march on, and maybe Joe Joyce considers retirement after this. 39 years old is not no spring chicken. So he needs to consider what he's doing with his future if he loses this fight, which I believe he will do. As I said, if Filip Hrgovic loses, I believe he could still go on to have some sort of career and still try and make a comeback. Depending on the fashion of how he loses, if he loses. I don't think he's going to lose. I think he's going to beat Joe Joyce on points. So that's my prediction. Filip Hrgovic to win unanimous decision, maybe split decision, but I'm going for unanimous decision over the 10 round distance. And I'll see you guys in the next video.